So Bryan Mbeumo is on the cusp of joining Matheus Cunha in making the move to Manchester, and Marcus Rashford continues to be linked with a move to Spain. We're touching on both alongside the off-the-field antics of Alejandro Garnacho, your questions and much more. It is the latest episode of your Theatre of Red. Hello there, one and all. As always, you are very welcome to your weekly Manchester United therapy session with Shaun Connolly. Now, for some time, it may seem like a monotonous ordeal to sit and speak about a football club weekly when there is no football being played. But that is not an issue here, ladies and gentlemen. No. We have much to unpack, and what better way to spend your drive to or from work or your time out with the dog than with little old me. Now, make no mistake, I love each and every one of you for giving me the time of day, and that will never be lost on me regardless. Where better to start than with the story that we exclusively brought out in August of last year. That is, of course, the story of Marcus Rashford and his desire to join the Barcelona ranks. Now, I've just mentioned August. As we revealed then, Marcus was a name that was brought to the table during a sports management meeting between the Barcelona hierarchy and initially tabled as a viable option by Hansi Flick. The German is a long-time admirer of Rashford, and he insisted that Deco add his name to a list of potential recruits to enhance his forward line and his options. As we know, there was plenty of back and forth from that, and Marcus inevitably ended up making his loan move to Aston Villa, impressing for the club and also for Thomas Tuchel, before picking up a frustrating hamstring injury toward the end of the season. However, what some are unaware of, and it was a point that I released in the days after his move, he never actually viewed Villa as a permanent option regardless of what was published, and still regarded Barcelona as his dream destination before playing a senior game in Birmingham. And that was absolutely before he even kicked a ball in Birmingham. Truthfully, I can also tell you now that Barca made significant attempts to sign Rashford in January, but the biggest stumbling block came with an inability to offload Ansu Fati, preventing any form of deal surfacing then. Obviously, some time has passed, and as we now know today, the La Liga side remains keen on acquiring Rashford, but have instead set their sights on Nico Williams as their primary target. Given his release clause lies around €60 million, we are told that the club views this, and I quote, as an unmissable venture to acquire a €100 million player for significantly less. Now that speaks for itself. You, me, anybody else listening knows that makes sense. But don't allow this to skew the lines and convince you that Rashford has been deemed surplus to requirements in their transfer plans, because I assure you he has not. Believe me when I say they would purchase him if they had been run financially savvy, but funds are their primary issue. I wonder where we've heard that before, people. That said, the club is aware of the reliance that inevitably fell on the shoulders of Lamine Yamal throughout the final quarter of their season, and that was despite the best efforts of Rafinha. They want depth, and we're told that they're committed to achieving the desired forward depth this summer. Ideally, they crave a forward player who can facilitate wide roles and the number 9 capacity, and they ultimately feel that Rashford is the man for them. As we exclusively reported yesterday, alongside long-term Spanish colleague Albert Fernandez, Barcelona want to take the player on a simple season-long loan with a standard fee and a large contribution towards his salary. But critically here now, there is a desire to remove an obligation to purchase at this moment in time, and that may prove a valuable stumbling block against Ineos officials. I will say, though, that there is notable pull from the player to side in all of this, and this is only sort of partially known by the public. We are aware that Rashford's team partnered with Pini Zahavi in early May in an attempt to broker what has been dubbed as his dream move. Now, if you're unaware, this man is close friends with Joan Laporta, and he also represents Hansi Flick and Robert Lewandowski. Additionally, he's also working alongside a man called Arturo Canales, who has acted as an intermediary in all of this, regularly in contact with Deco, while also touching base with Manchester officials. Canales manages the interest of several young Barca players, And we've been told that he is known and maybe an associate of sorts to the YouTube channel Expire, who, as we know, Rashford spoke with and confirmed his desire to play with Yamal. At this point, unless you can actually gather what I'm saying, it is worthwhile noting Marcus Rashford is very selective about who he speaks with. And as we saw with a friend of the Theatre of Red in Mr. Henry Winter, Marcus specifically selected him to advise the world that it was time to leave Manchester United. Henry, as we all know, has a global reach. This is a man revered, so who better to speak with and get your message across than through one of the most respected individuals in the game? Now, at this stage, nothing is certain because Ineos obviously holds the cards and would rather a permanent sale because he is a one-way attacker. And obviously we're trying to be removing any sort of deterrent in the dressing room and to cleanse that environment. Barca does remain committed to striking a deal to bolster their lineup, and we're even told that Marcus is happy to take a pay cut to complete his move. This is one that is growing daily. And undeniably, people, it has the ability to rise or fall within a matter of hours on any given day. But rest assured, Rashford does have multiple options on the table, and he's not putting all his hope in a move to Barcelona, despite his ambitions. But this is something that he is strategically trying to work towards, as are Barcelona. But then when you look at it, and you look at all of these potential departures of one-time favourites, it's not all about doom and gloom anymore in the Northwest, people. And we appear to be seeing a football club that is beginning to act like a big boy Premier League outfit. Obviously, Matheus Cunha is signed, sealed, and ready to deliver for a wounded fan base. And Bryan Mbeumo is on the cusp of joining him. If you are a regular listener to this podcast, you will be aware that we were amongst the first to cock our chests out and proudly confirm that the club had made purchasing Mbeumo a summer priority long ago. As we discussed over the past couple of weeks, confidence has always been high about ironing out the finer details. And we also understand Brentford's stance on receiving similar funds to what Wolves generated. With the best of respect to any of these online transfer aficionados, Brentford are entitled because you have to look at his output and the metrics that he has given them at the highest level. You don't need me to tell you that his medical has been booked in for next week, because every account and their dog walker are doing just that. So we're in the formality stages of agreeing on achievable add-ons to allow the player what he has described, well, maybe not him directly, but it has been described through him through sources about his dream move. And as we confirmed several weeks ago, a base figure in the region of £60 million will hold hands with several add-ons to bring the package closer to 65, with maybe some change thrown in as well. Now, his acquisition is as welcome as Cunha's. And we should not ignore the prospect of recruiting two players who are approaching their peak. I can't tell you how much I've desired these type of signings for so long. They're not generic European mercenaries who demand this gargantuan payday for the honour of playing at Old Trafford. These are tried and tested domestic stars who have been there and done it at the highest level. Yes, obviously, you must highlight previous surroundings and an ability to play a certain strength, if you will, against a more attacking team. You know when they come to Manchester United that they're going to play against plenty of contrasting styles, and there's going to be a lot of low box with this mentality of come and get me, see what you can do. That in itself offers an altogether different dynamic, and it's one that I'm sure that they will thrive in. Look at it this way. As I tweeted yesterday evening, the pair have notched 84 goal contributions in 128 Premier League appearances over the last 2 seasons. To really level that one down even more, it's a goal contribution every 124 minutes played. Unsurprisingly, there are some who continue to focus on negatives and who the next arrival will be to complement them. I firmly believe that this stems from the ideal that we need to discard everything and add about 8 or 9 new players in order to see something resembling attractive football. And I'm sorry, but I just don't share that opinion. I remember putting out a query across social media regarding how people would feel heading into the season with a list of 8 players that included the 2 signings, and then Bruno, Ahmad, Mount, Højlund, Xerxes, Mainoo, as attacking names who can impact the game in the final third, and they have impacted the game in the final third. It was immediately dismissed in large because it didn't include a number 9 like Victor Gyökeres or Victor Osimhen. So I sort of peeled that back, and it led me to move towards investigating the general agenda that people possess toward the likes of Højlund in particular, because as we know, he's receiving the fulcrum of abuse across the fan base, and many feel that he is the fault for the lack of attacking prowess that we've seen throughout the season. To be clear, before I go off on this, I'm not going to sit here and debate about how poor he was last season and the lack of confidence that he displayed weekly. It's pretty clear that we saw a man who was but a fragment of a shadow of himself. But what I will sit here and debate and speak to you about is how so many people have rewritten history to scratch out his accomplishments during his debut season, and that was only when he was given a handful of opportunities. So I asked a simple question, I'm not sure if you saw it or not, across the United fan base on social media through various polls on various platforms about whether they would accept a striker, and this was an unnamed striker, who had notched 10 goals and provided 2 assists from 16 Premier League appearances. Without any concern, and just as I had pretty much thought, the figure began and it soared to 71% up to 75% in favour of yes. It was resounding. So after about a third of the poll running, I decided to start dropping hints in the comments about who the player was, and I did it through several outlets that weren't my own. And this outstandingly high yes figure of 75% dropped and eventually ended with 51% of the poll going against the prospect from thousands of votes throughout all of the polls. Let me be clear. I'm not here to lecture you or to tell you that your opinion is incorrect. I assure you, I would never do that. If you know me, if you speak to me on social media, or if you know me personally, you know that I would never do that. But I would ask you to consider the benefits of supplying somebody like Rasmus Højlund with proven Premier League attackers on either side, adding to the likes of Bruno, Ahmad, and Patrick Dorgu advancing from every angle. Can he convert opportunities? And it's what someone is going to ask me. They'll say, Shaun, we have all these opportunities, we'll create all these opportunities. How is he going to convert them? What I would say to that is last season obviously wouldn't inspire any confidence, and it's impossible to make a case for that based on what we saw. But I always like to look at the mitigating factors surrounding issues, and he had so many to deal with, but none were more damaging than the forever self-indulging figure of Alejandro Garnacho. I'm not going to bore you with endless statistics to support my claims, but I ask you to just take these simple few. Despite registering one less league goal throughout the previous 2 campaigns, Garnacho attempted 114 more shots on goal than Højlund did. To put this in a larger perspective, Garnacho attempted 184 shots and he scored 13. Højlund attempted 70, so that's 70, 114 less. He scored 14, which was 1 more. And the factor that stands out for me the most is those 10 goals and 2 assists from December the 26th until the season end of his debut campaign. During that period, he rivaled Cole Palmer, Mo Salah, Erling Haaland, and Alexander Isak for goals. I say this with about as much confidence as I possibly can as an individual that watches football like you do. I assure you that we have a goal scorer in Rasmus Højlund. And although I'm not 100% sure of what the summer holds, because I do know, and I have been told from officials close to Carrington, that Inter Milan and Juventus are both pursuing him avidly. Both want to sign him, whether that's on a loan deal with an obligation to buy or an outright purchase. But the youngster is adamant that he wants to stay and fight for his place in the team. Now, at a time when our so-called superstars are more interested in deliberately posing in rival shirts to cause a stir on social media, is it not worthwhile buying into an attacking vision of Cunha and Mbeumo, who both want to be here, alongside a younger forward who can not only learn from 2 proven attackers, but he's also proven that he can do it at the football club? You can call me that dated, old-fashioned romantic that I continuously reference, but I know how I feel about our forward line and moving forward, and I just had this little niggling thing in the back of my mind that says a player like Rasmus Højlund, who wants to be here and who wants to succeed at his boyhood club, would have every opportunity to do so, alongside Bryan Mbeumo and Matthias Cunha.
I don't think we have one player that come here and then don't think about to glory days in Man United, to remember all the time. Then they win the Premier Leagues, how many titles was, and of course to qualify for Champions League. And this is what I think about United, to put this club on top. And then what I can do is everything to show them I'm here to help the team to conquer this kind of things. I'm someone that try to learn for the mistakes, for the good things. And of course, I think I have a little bit this maturity now.
On to what has become one of my favourite slots of the week, and that is getting to your questions and really connecting with what has become a valuable and a loyal audience. Hanse Fleur, I hope I pronounced that right, has got in touch and presented a question regarding a topic that is generating ample discussion amongst the fan base. He says, "Hey Shaun, I love the show and I would love to hear your opinion about Casemiro and how he has again attracted interest from the Saudi Public Investment Fund, with speculation surfacing about a potential departure. Yes, we have reinforced our attacking lineup, but I can't help but feel we require a body in midfield. What are your thoughts on Casemiro leaving the club and another body coming in?" Well, firstly, thank you for the kind words, my friend. You'll be pleased to know that I do indeed love you too. I think it's fair to say that Casemiro has surprised more than a handful with his resurgence during the second half of the season and what was the ultimate throwback to a glittering career. At a time when United required some form of leadership, he returned to that impressive figure during multiple moments throughout the final chapters of the season. Obviously, it goes without saying that he isn't getting any younger, and when you consider a gross salary of over £18 million per year, that presents a pretty hideous financial burden for a football club that is attempting to rectify its standing under the ever-watchful eyes of the Premier League and UEFA's financial restrictions. But I think within this financial conundrum lies the very real issue presented in offloading a midfield player without the promise of an equally capable body to walk through the door in place of him. So anybody who knows me is aware that I will not spew nonsense to generate clickbait or traction. I say that because it's just simply not in my DNA. I do not speak with individuals in and around the Saudi market presently. Can't say that won't be in the future, but I can neither confirm nor deny their interest. I do know that Ronaldo's staying has injected a new form of thinking in the league, with Ronnie said to have a fairly prominent say in recruitment and moving forward. And with that, you must remember, whether it is Al Nassr, Al Hilal, or any of them, there is an abundance of these football teams that are sleeping under the Public Investment Fund umbrella. So it's not necessarily about which team wants Casemiro. It's more so, can he benefit the overall growth and exposure of the league? On the other side as well, with Ronaldo gaining influence on arrivals, it's well documented about his friendship with Casemiro. And maybe he believes that his one-time teammate can aid in further silverware to boost this never-ending desire for personal glory. In terms of Manchester United, however, can you logically let him go now, when you're facing this rebuild with midfield options of two extremely talented youngsters in Kobbie Mainoo and Toby Collier, alongside Manuel Ugarte, who, may I add right now, is being subjected to the most nonsensical form of online abuse, even when you consider the toxic elements of the United fan base. He's just turned 24, people, and he has so much to offer this team and this system. Just some people set the most unnecessary and unrealistic forms of critique. That said, despite the talent and potential of the three, even if you factor in Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount as options who can fulfill in a midfield 8, does it make sense to wave goodbye to your veteran midfielder who, even if he starts on the bench, can supply assistance in a cameo or rotational role alongside the obvious benefits that he supplies in the dressing room and on the training field? If I was told that we could bring in an athletic option with a relatively meagre salary in football terms, at an age where he could continue to grow and offer much in the engine room alongside the aforementioned players, I think I would feel a lot better about the prospect of Casemiro leaving now. But if it is a case that he leaves for a small fee, and we then offload his wages to then see whatever remaining funds we can spend being placed elsewhere, well, I know it'll generate ample frustration and worry in the fan base. I may be going against the grain in saying this, but I firmly believe Mainoo can and will excel in a midfield too. I think far too many have written him off for reasons that I just will not accept, and I would be delighted for us to persevere with him alongside Ugarte And if they need to overcome a couple of weeks of transitional performances, then fine, as long as they can develop the type of bond that I want to see. That said, I think I would feel a lot safer in the knowledge that Casemiro was helping them on the training field and sitting pitchside to jump in and offer assistance when required. Now, elsewhere, John Welsh has emailed in and asked what I think about Alejandro Garnacho's behaviour and my feeling about the player. Firstly, I hope all is good with you, sir. Thank you for what I believe is your debut question. In short, I am both aggravated and sympathetic for Garnacho. Clearly, he has surrounded himself with a group of people and ill-informed advisors who spend their days telling him what he wants to hear instead of what he needs to hear, especially at this age. Remember, he's a 20-year-old boy, and people forget that because of his spotlight. I have a 19-year-old boy. I love my son Marcus with all my heart, and there's nothing that I wouldn't do to scream his praises. But like me at that age, he makes some questionable decisions, and he requires an arm around his shoulder from time to time to get him back on track, just as I did, and every other 19, 20-year-old does. I'm not saying I always get it right, but I certainly wouldn't be advising him to pop on a Villa shirt with the name of a teammate who has openly declared his desire to leave amidst a time of heartache and trouble for the supporter base. I mean, you lose a European final, and your first port of call is to highlight your dissatisfaction with a lack of playing time, and that comes instead of connecting with the fan base to offer your apologies and bleed with them all. He should have a group who are advising him of this. Obviously, he's a child, and it's a competitive player who wants to play from the start on a season-defining stage, but vent those frustrations in private. I remember speaking with the great Sam Pilger on this podcast many months ago, and I highlighted a worrying social media trend when things didn't go his way. At that point, I gave him the benefit of the doubt, but I certainly will not be doing so now. He's made it clear that he wants to move on, and considering his age and his ability, I don't suspect the club will find it difficult to collect a buyer, because there's always going to be a personality who will believe they can provide the change he requires. I always felt we were inheriting a talent who would eventually grow to a certain stature and move on to emulate the likes of Ronaldo. Unfortunately for him, I don't believe he is anywhere near as talented as he thinks he is. And as I've stated previously, I actually think that he has jeopardized this attack and the progress of Rasmus Højlund, but that is just my opinion. So, John, my feelings are simple. I'm not disappointed in how he has gone about handling his business, but I'm sorry that he's so ill-advised by a disgraceful management team. And it really highlights that what so many people say is a lack of intelligence on the football field, that's clearly passing over off the field with his business as well. And I wish him the best, and I hope we get as much money out of the deal as is humanly possible. And I think I have time for one final question. It comes in from Martha Briggs, who has also got in touch for the very first time. She says, Shaun, I hope all is well. I can't tell you how much I look forward to hearing your voice every week. We stop right there now. And side note, I love you, Martha. She asks if I believe a top 6 return is unrealistic this season. Okay. I don't think it is an unrealistic expectation to have. And in simplistic terms, Forest finished 7th with 65 points, I believe. It was 65 points. And it was a solitary point off Champions League football. They were 17th with 32 points 12 months prior. It's a 33-point difference in a year. Now, I know we're looking at different football clubs with totally contrasting expectations, but I always say that momentum is the greatest attribute for any group of players. A handful of goals here and a handful of wins here, alongside a promising performance and a supporter base who are buying into the team. I always believe that is worth more than any amount of money that you can spend in the summer window. This team is obviously lacking goals, that is just so evident. But we've added Cunha and are on the cusp of adding Mbeumo, both before a ball is kicked in pre-season. Now, that's not the actions of this football club over the past 2 decades. It's not perfect in terms of where we are and what is required, but Ruben Amorim is a sensational coach, and I do trust him implicitly. Furthermore, as a supporter, I've always found it easier to get behind the team or a vision and to discard disappointment to focus on what we could achieve if and when everything starts clicking. This football club is obviously at a crucial point where the ambitions of a strong backroom team are locking with that of a young and hungry tactical mind. We're on the cusp of having 2 brilliant footballers approaching their prime years entering the club to join the likes of Bruno and Ahmad, who are capable of doing anything on any given day against any team. A scarred supporter base is quick to pick up on what we don't have, particularly on social media, but there is so much more in what we do have than meets the eye. And as I said last week, I'm thrilled that we have such a difficult start to the season because we're playing no other side that has already generated momentum. And make no mistake, we are not stopping at 2 signings this summer. It was always the plan to bring in the main targets early to integrate into the team during pre-season. The fact that it is nearly accomplished is a massive bonus, and it's a plus point towards a successful redemption season.